Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name's Lee. Today I'm going to talk about Western brands and the Russian market. Now, when Russia invaded Ukraine some 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a rush of Western brands, announcing that they're going to quit the Russian market. Then we had France advising their companies not to leave. Maybe that's to give them an advantage over the Germans, because there's a sort of bit of rivalry in the EU between France and Germany. But however, many Western companies, some decided to leave, some decided to stay, and there's all different varying degrees of what they're doing in Russia. But I found this really useful sort of report or chart or whatever you want to call it on the Yale School of Management's website. And as I record this video, they've documented the activities of 500 companies, Western companies, and what they're deciding to do about either leaving or staying in the Russian market. And they've divided those companies into 5 different categories. And those categories are as follows. So the first one is digging in. Define demands for exit or reduction of activities. Companies that are just continuing business as usual in Russia. And second one is buying time. Holding off new investment and development. So companies postponing future planned investment, development or marketing while continuing substantive business. And 3, we have scaling back. Reducing current operations. Companies that are scaling back some significant business operations but continuing some others. And then number 4 is suspension, keeping options open for return. Companies temporarily curtailing most or nearly all operations while keeping return options open. And then finally, which is another big category, so suspension and finally withdrawal are the largest 2 categories. So withdrawal, clean break, surgical removal. Companies totally halting Russian engagements or completely exiting Russia. Now, you will see that there are a lot of big brands in especially the 4th and 5th categories. But the thing I want to talk about today is companies that have franchises, and there are a number of issues surrounding this. So first I'll just go through a few of the companies that have franchise operations. So the largest one is Burger King, and they have over 800 restaurants that are franchised. The next is Subway with around 450, Papa John's with 186. Now, McDonald's have a large presence in Russia, but most of those are company owned, and they have 135 franchise restaurants. KFC and Pizza Hut with over 100. And then we move on to other companies like Marks and Spencer, who have 48. All of their stores are franchised. And Accor Hotels, who operate the Ibis and Novotel brands, and their interests are also franchised. Now, a number of these operations are continuing to operate within the Russian market, and the Western brand owners have little or no power to actually force them to close. And this obviously is because they're a franchise, and in those franchise agreements there will be no clause for anything like what has happened. And also you've got to look at it from the franchisee's perspective, that they would never sign a contract that would allow them to be sort of closed down overnight. So if you look at somebody like Alexander Kolbov, who's the owner of 800 Burger King franchises, then if he shut down that operation, one, he would lose all his investment. Two, he would lose all his ongoing income. He would be responsible for making thousands and thousands of people redundant. And that doesn't just include people who work in the restaurants, but also in the supply chain. Obviously, operating 800 restaurants, there's a huge supply chain behind that. Many people will be employed in that, maybe tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So again, he doesn't want to be responsible for shutting all that down and making those people redundant. Now, Restaurant Brands International, who are the parent company of the Burger King brand in the USA, are obviously quite concerned, as will others be, franchisee owners will be, about their sort of reputation, that they're still operating in the Russian market. And Restaurant Brands International have issued a statement on their corporate website, and that was done by David Shear, the president of Restaurant Brands International. And it states that Alexander Kolobov is responsible for the day-to-day operations and oversight of the 800 restaurants in Russia. They go on to say, we started the process to dispose our ownership stake in the business. While we would like to do this immediately, it is clear that it will take some time to do. So based on the terms of our existing joint venture agreement, we contacted the main operator of the business and demanded the suspension of Burger King restaurant operations in Russia. They have refused to do so. We suspended all corporate support for the Russian market, including operations, marketing and supply chain support, in addition to refusing approvals for new investment and expansion. We committed to redirecting any profits we receive from the business, including our ownership stake, to the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and made an immediate donation of $1 million toward that commitment. We've also worked with franchisees from more than 25 countries to distribute $2 million of free meal coupons for Burger King restaurants to NGOs supporting Ukrainian refugees. When master franchise agreements and joint ventures are formed, there are extensive commitments to long-term investments and accountabilities to grow the business together. There are no legal clauses that allow us to unilaterally change the contract or allow any one of the partners to simply walk away or overturn the entire agreement. No serious investor in any industry in the world would agree to a long-term business relationship with flimsy termination clauses. This is exactly why we say it's a complicated legal process when we are asked why we can't just unilaterally shut down the business. Any current attempt to enforce our contract would ultimately require the support of Russian authorities on the ground, and we know that will not practically happen anytime soon. So you can see what a dilemma these franchises are in. You have the brands on one side, the US brands on one side, wanting to shut down those brands in Russia to protect their reputation around the world, and you have the franchisee owners in Russia who've invested huge amounts of money into these franchises, wanting to keep those businesses going. So we're at a bit of a stalemate now. That statement mentions they will need the help of the Russian authorities. Personally, I think after what these Western companies have done, imposing illegal unilateral sanctions on Russia, I wouldn't imagine the Russian authorities will be in a massive rush to help these Western companies. The statement also mentions that Burger King corporate have withdrew all their support, but I would imagine many of the services and goods that Burger King need to procure within Russia to run that business are all made locally, or a majority of them. So I would imagine the franchisee will support that local supply chain business and continue to receive deliveries of goods. It'll be like burger buns, burgers, sauces, packaging. And I think actually there wouldn't be a huge problem in sourcing all that product locally to continue running those operations. Now, what might happen in the future? Well, my thoughts, this all really depends on how things play out over the next few months. So some of the brands that have left Russia, they will obviously have empty premises there, which will still be full of equipment and machinery. And I would imagine some of those Russian companies will just continue to trade, possibly under those brands. They may change the brand slightly. It may be that the Russian authorities pass some sort of laws, sort of giving ownership to those Russian companies. I really don't know. So we need to see how this pans out. But for now, a lot of those franchises are continuing to operate. Now, long term, I think the companies on that list that have decided to withdraw altogether will ultimately, I think, regret that decision. Russia is a fairly sizable market, and obviously those companies that have completely withdrew or shut down operations in the Russian market will feel that reflected in their profits going forward. So it's possible that shares of those companies will take a hit due to the lost revenue and profit from the Russian market. Now, who do I think will be the gainers in this situation? Well, I think the gainers will be companies that stay there because after the turmoil, those companies will be seen by Russia as being a bit more loyal than the companies that left. I feel that the companies that left will find it very, very difficult to re-enter the Russian market. And I also feel some of that void will be filled by new companies. And I suspect many of those new companies that enter the Russian market will be companies from Southeast Asia, particularly China. China industry and commerce have they're very good at adapting to situations extremely quickly. And I think there will be many companies now in China looking at what the holes are in the Russian market, the shortfalls in the Russian market, and quickly manufacturing and rebranding their products in Russia to take advantage of that market. Anyway, that's it for today. I'd love to know what you think in the comments down below about all this. But as always, for now, take care.